And a guy came up to me and he said, I've been trying to get my kids into Ultraman forever. They just weren't interested. And then they watched this movie and my kid is obsessed now. Like I almost broke down in tears because it's what I wanted. New fans to feel the same way I did when I was a kid.
Hey, this is Sam Stone here at the Den of Geek Studios at Comic-Con 2024 with Shannon Tindle, the director and co-writer of Ultraman Rising, available to stream now on Netflix. Shannon, thanks for sitting with me on the couch today.
I'm so excited to be here.
Like any good story, let's start at the beginning. What was your gateway into the wide, wide world of Ultraman?
OG series. So when I was growing up in rural Kentucky, where you can imagine not a whole lot of like tokusatsu, although we had Godzilla movies on a Saturday afternoon. It was on in syndication, and I saw an episode and I hadn't seen anything like it. And by that point, I was probably about 6 or 7, but I'd seen a lot of stuff from Marvel and DC and was an avid comic reader already. But there was just something different about Ultraman that just stuck in my head. So OG Ultraman was my gateway drug.
Well, in looking at the breadth of the Ultraman franchise, from the OG Ultraman, Zero, Shin, all that good stuff, when you were kind of creating, Ken and the world of Ultraman Rising, what were some of your big golden rules? Like, okay, this is Ultraman, it needs to have this.
Well, the story didn't start off as an Ultraman film because I didn't think I'd ever get the rights to it. So I was developing it at Sony. It was called Made in Japan at that time. And there were inspirations for it, but I really mainly just wanted to tell this family story about the relationships between parents and children. And then when it went to turn around at Sony, brought it over to Netflix, and they said, how would you like to do an Ultraman film? I'm like, I'd love to do that. So then I could dig into all the lore and all the stuff that I loved. But the golden rule was if it distracts from people who've never seen Ultraman, then it's not in. If it supports the story that we're telling, it's in. So, and I think because of that, there are a lot of fans when the trailers were rolling out and they were like, this is going to suck. We're not going to, like, I don't know, is it really Ultraman? I mean, he's in the Manny-san suit, but it's about, all this stuff. And then they saw it, and then they saw how much we all loved Ultraman and put that love in there. So it really was just about just making sure that whatever we did supported the story.
The Ken kind of Emmy thing, and Mina was always kind of like the touchstone, because in a way, you look at his arc, and Emmy transforms him more than ever becoming Ultraman does.
Yeah, so yeah, it was Ken, Emmy, Mina, and Ken's dad. And his mom was always that Ken's mom, dad, and the legacy of what it's like to take on this big burden of, from another parent. There's this huge legacy you have to live up to. And then the idea that Ken's mom and dad have been on this journey trying to find the peace with the kaiju, and the thing that brings not only peace, at least understanding with the kaiju, and understanding between Ken and his father is the thing that would normally cause them to fight. That was the whole idea always.
Like you were saying, there is something about Ultraman compared to other tokusatsu, and I love the Showa Godzilla movies, but Jet Jaguar isn't Ultraman as much as he may try. Like, what is that X factor that makes Ultraman Ultraman?
It's a lot of things. I think at this point, Eiji Tsuburaya had already had a lot of experience, doing the effects in the Godzilla films. But for me, I think it's that original design that told Narita design, the iconic red and silver, the idea that he was inspired by a gray alien for the face mask, and the proportions of it are just right. And they evolved even in that, in that first season. You have A-type Ultraman where he had that weird rubbery mask because he was supposed to talk. Well, let's abandon that. My favorite, and I think this is Ano-san's favorite too, is B-type with the pointy shoes, and the mask is just a little bit different. And then that final C-type, which is of course, the iconic one. But I think that design has a lot to do with it. And I think the relationships of the original team members, that science team, they feel like they're your friends. And even though they're going into these big battles, they have this lightheartedness about them. In the series, although you come to learn when you watch it more that there are deeper things going on, it still always had this charm and fun to it. I think it's what brought kids in and then generations of fans after.
Let's talk about those action scenes real quick. Like, how did you, you've done all kinds of action over your career. You've done medieval fantasy and everything. How did you want to do big scale kaiju fights?
Well, it was one of the conversations I had with our visual effects supervisor, Hayden Jones, at ILM in the beginning, and he's a huge fan of anime and manga and American comics and these things. But we had that issue of scale, and I wanted to use real lenses. We had a real lens kit for the film, and mostly primes. We knew we were going to be pretty wide, But I didn't want them to feel slow and lumbering the way a lot of creatures do. And it's because that's what your perception would be. But we looked at Evangelion. And if you look at the fights in that, if you look how the Evas move, they're quick and dynamic and nimble. And because we were going to be telling that story from Ultraman's perspective, it felt like those are the things that we were going to do. And then when you get into like deep action, let's blur the background, let's add speed lines, let's have the impact frames. Then let's do some new things that we can. Let's just lock on the fist as it's coming. But then also, again, another golden rule was in all these action sequences, it has to be emotionally driven, and we don't want battle fatigue. Can we talk? Can we just I want a conversation. Can we have that? And so finding those pauses in those moments, those were all the things that we would do, but we would block it out with action figures. We'd block it out in the room. The big specium beam at the end. I think there were four of us in a room, and we were talking about how we were going to land that at the end. Like, what's he going to do? Because we know he's going to use the specium beam because he hasn't before. What do we do? And I remember I just grabbed John. I said, John, get down. You're Ultra Dad. Okay, and then I squatted down. It was just one of those things where I had the idea, and then we did it, and we may even have pictures of it somewhere. But it was just one of those things where I had the idea and we did it. But it was really a lot of collaboration between a lot of people smarter than me, who were, and the guys at ILM. They're so good with camera. And Hayden, I can't say enough about him. We've worked together now over 2 projects in 6 years, and he's just spectacular.
This is always kind of the tricky question, but golly, does Ultraman Rising kind of leave open room for a continuation of some sort?
Yes, that was intentional. And that ending, by the way, I didn't tell anybody, and I didn't put it in the script. I just boarded it myself. And then when we got in the room, I said, I'm going to pitch you guys something. And I pitched it, and it was like, what? And then we cut it in. We didn't tell anybody, and everybody saw it, and it stayed. And I have ideas for films 2 and 3. I want to get more into the KDF. Ken's mom actually founded the KDF. I want to get into that, the genesis of it, what the original philosophy was to help creatures before Onda took it over, and then get deep. Now that we've kind of laid the groundwork in the first film, I think we can get a little bit deeper into the Ultraman mythology.
And you've kind of touched on this before, but, we're doing this. It's been like 60 years of Ultraman. Like, you look at other things, it's older than Star Trek. It's about the same age as Doctor Who. Like, how crucial do you think like the sense of reinvention every generation is? And what do you hope that Ultraman Rising brings to this generation?
It's one of the things I've said often. It's innate to the franchise that there's change. You have new faces, new teams, new powers, new suits. And what the feedback that I've gotten, and this has been one of my favorite things about it. I was just at the booth yesterday, and a guy came up to me and he said, I've been trying to get my kids into Ultraman forever. They just weren't interested. And then they watched this movie, and my kid is obsessed now. And he's like, can you sign? He had an Ultraman Cosmos toy. He said, can you sign the toy? I'm like, I almost broke down in tears because it's what I wanted. I wanted new fans to feel the same way I did when I was a kid. And it's one of those things, too, where I think people, a lot of times they're expecting origin stories, and I didn't want to do that because when you watch that show, I don't start from episode 1. I pick up whatever happened to be on TV at that time. It's different now, but like episode 6, I don't know who the science team is. I don't know who Ultraman is. I just know I'm engaged with this really cool-looking character who's there to kind of defend people and trying to find some sort of balance.
And again, Ultraman Rising, available to stream now on Netflix. This is Sam Stone here at Comic-Con 2024 in the Den of Geek Studios. Keep on.
Keeping on.